It's David Coriale from DelCor, and I'm here to talk about the pathway that I was a pathway leader for this morning, which is the technology and the infrastructure piece of the Tech 13 show. And one of the questions that came in on some previous emails was, what are the key session takeaways for the technical pathway? And the technical pathway happened this morning, the key session did, so one of the takeaways we had was that the technical folks from the association community feel like one of their main constrictions of what they're trying to accomplish is based on the fact that they're not 100% sure they have leadership's objectives clearly defined, or that they're getting clear support from leadership. Yet when they are being evaluated, it's often based on how well the technology addresses the business needs. So that was something the room kind of came to an aha moment about, in terms of there's a direct conflict between not understanding or communicating the objectives to being evaluated on meeting the objectives. So that was something we're going to process also in the last session of the technology conference during the town hall. Another question that came in was, what are the important trends that are occurring right now? And speaking to that point, I think we have to really look at the mobile aspect of not only our membership, but of our staff. You know, as organizations face more and more challenges in terms of times of commute, location of remote employees, access to data and intelligence from remote locations, that's where we're really seeing the infrastructure people have to come up in terms of what they're delivering as far as user experience, as far as accessibility to the systems, and accessibility to staff from remote locations. Because that's really, it's not only a technical shift, it's a culture shift for the organization. So the technology really needs to be in place in order to support that shift in the way that we're working these days. So moving along to another question we got was, you know, what are we looking at in the future? What trends do we need to be considering for upcoming changes in technology? And so far at this conference, I've seen two Google Glass examples, walking around, taking pictures, looking at different things and showing us their augmented virtual reality over, you know, the actual reality. So I think as we're preparing for the way that we're running our events, that we're delivering member services as associations, we need to really take into account that what we're seeing as kind of a cutting edge, or seeing as a toy at this point, you know, kind of from the technology sectors, that we really need to take into account that, like everything else we've seen, you know, smartphones, tablets, etc., this is going to take hold, and we're going to find ways to deliver, or we're going to need to find ways to deliver member services to really surface the value proposition of our organizations using these newer technologies that are right now maybe a little trendy, but ultimately coming out to be something that we need to take into account. Another question we got is, what's the main obstacle for moving the organization into the cloud? And I would say it's probably going to be, one, the timing is an issue, because you really want to look at this particularly when you have a hardware refresh coming up, and instead of investing in new premise-based hardware, are you going to move to the cloud? And that's kind of a logistics issue, but really when you think about what that signifies to the organization in terms of a cultural shift, or in terms of a way that we work shift, that's something that really has to get into the culture and work its way into the culture of the organization. So it's not necessarily the technology, it's probably not even a little bit the technology as much as it is us adopting to change, which we know, everyone knows is hard. So it's changing the way we work, it's a change in the way we work with each other, it's a change in the way we manage, it's a change in the way we collaborate. So put all that together, and it's the obstacle, that adoption of change. And we got a couple more here. Mobile trends, challenges that are going on. I think probably the biggest mobile trend right now is developing apps that really do surface the value of your organization. A lot of organizations now have the apps that deal with when you're at a conference like this one. We have a great app for this conference in terms of managing your schedule, managing your time on the exhibit hall. I'm looking forward to what sessions you want to attend and building that. But we're moving past that point. Now we really need to look at what the organization's mission and vision is, and what their business objectives are, and make sure we're only delivering apps that deal with those pieces of criteria, as opposed to having an app just for the sake of having an app. So that's really where the trends are going right now. And then lastly, we got a question about addressing the problems of integration with different technologies. That's an age-old problem. You know, when we go back to the late 80s, early 90s, and yes, I go back that far, you know, we talked about open architecture. You know, in the 90s, we really got into the whole web services concept. But in reality, have we yet seen the integration that we all talk about at conferences like this, or that we all talk about in our requirements discussions for what we're trying to accomplish? I don't think we have. We're getting there. And the more and more the software developers and the application development companies open up their architecture and collaborate with each other, the more and more we're going to see the integration that we finally need, so that as an organization we can get a larger perspective on what our membership and what our constituents are doing and make better business decisions based on the data, as opposed to just looking at the data as transactional information. So those are definitely the integration problems, but I think we're finally starting to see more and more open discussion about how to integrate different tools together. And then lastly, I'd just like to say that, you know, from the technical tracks perspective, you know, really when it comes down to it, we, as the technology people, need to move the conversation off of the technology and onto the business objectives, the mission, the vision of the organization, so that when we're talking to the business units, they're understanding us, first of all, because we're not using jargon and talking about the technology, but we're making sure we're building that rapport so that we understand what they're trying to accomplish and can start to influence what they're trying to accomplish as much as we can then later on execute and supply that functionality to them from our different technologies that we pull from. So that's it, thank you.